I keep thinking you guys are still over here for some reason. So next we have our very special guest speaker, and I'm not going to introduce him. Instead, I'm going to allow one of our previous interns to introduce him, and you'll find out why in just a moment.
Hey everyone again, Dante Flood for any of y'all who don't know me. And before I introduce this next speaker, I'd just like to say you all have received emails from me regarding him a lot. And here's why. He is the first African American and the only African American to uphold vice presidential position in General Motors. Every other automobile you've seen on the street, he has been affiliated with designing, whether it be national or worldwide. He's also has been affiliated with movies. He's worked with Michael Bay. And I would just have the honor and privilege of please welcoming Mr. Edward T. Welburn.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Can I work from up here in the podium?
Of course, of course.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Does this mic, so I can put this one down?
Move this laptop.
Just leave it closed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I got here a little early, and I had the opportunity to listen to the previous workshop with the previous speaker. And I mean, that's just incredible information for you. I wish that I had that kind of advantage when I was an intern, and I wish more young people had the opportunity to listen to her message. That was really good. Hopefully, we'll have time at the end of this so we can have a little Q&A. And I have recently completed what has been an unbelievable career at General Motors. Just living my lifelong dream to be a car designer. My story has really been of my laser focus on that dream since my childhood. It seems like a fairy tale in some ways, but it was also, there were challenges along the way, a lot of hard work, and at times I needed to get way out of my comfort zone to get to where I wanted to go. Yes, at age 2 years old, when most toddlers were drawing stick figures of people or houses or just scribbling, I was drawing cars. At age 8, crazy about cars, I convinced my parents to take me to the auto show. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so we went to the Philly Auto Show. And the auto show was my Disneyland. It was my fantasy land. You know, the bright, shiny lights, the shiny cars. And it was where I saw this concept car, this incredible dream car, the Cadillac Cyclone. And I knew at that moment that I needed to be a car designer for that company, and it was General Motors. I was 8 years old. And at 8 years old, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do when I grew up. I know it sounds crazy, but when you really think about it, world-class athletes and business leaders really begin their mission at a very young age. Obviously, an Olympic runner doesn't wait until 2 weeks before the Olympics to start training. There are years of training and setbacks and great achievements along the way. As a child, I was a slow reader, and my mother encouraged me to read. She wanted me to read all the time. I was crazy about cars, so I read car magazines, and I read car magazines from cover to cover. And my reading improved, and through those magazines, I found out where those great cars were designed. In order to achieve your goal or your vision, you need a roadmap of where you want to go and how you want to get there. So, age 11, I wrote my first letter to General Motors Design. Yes, they answered my letter, and they gave me great information about careers in design, and it was really the beginning of my relationship with that company. My career roadmap meant that I needed to develop my artistic skills to get into a school of design, a college of design. Think of college as the Olympic training camp for a career. And so there's years of training and preparation that I needed to go through to even get into that training camp. Through middle school and high school, I lived cars, car design, art, design of all types, always with my eye on the dream of designing cars for GM, even continuing to write letters to General Motors and stay in communication with them. Senior year in college, my grades were great, and I applied to all of the leading schools of design in America, anxiously awaiting my acceptance to the Olympic trials for the games, which would have been design school. This is where the story goes sideways. I received a rejection letter from the Pratt Institute, one of America's premium design schools. By the way, fast forward a few decades, and I was given a special honor at Pratt Institute, and it wasn't until that day that they learned that they had declined my application to go to that school. But that was a cool experience. But at any rate, I received that first rejection from Pratt Institute. My grades were great, but my portfolio of artwork was not strong enough. It was not as complete, not as professional as the other candidates. Then I received my second and my third rejection letters. My dream of designing cars was in jeopardy. I was scared, but I continued to push forward. I was then accepted for admission into Howard University's School of Fine Arts. This is in 1968. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Howard University was great, and I can't thank the instructors at that school enough for the attention that they gave me while I was there. They knew my mission, they knew my goal, and supported me in every way that they could. In addition, I was still in communication with GM. If you can imagine communication without the internet, I actually wrote letters, and they responded. It was like a 2 to 3, sometimes 4-week process. You can imagine how slow that is. But through that process, I was able to land an internship with GM Design at the end of my junior year. My foot was now on the door at GM, and I was going to maximize that opportunity. It was a time to learn and a time to leave a positive impression with the leaders of GM Design, and it worked. By the end of the summer, the company was clear that they wanted to hire me after graduation. When I graduated from Howard University in 1972 and began work at GM Design, I had spent my entire life with the goal of becoming a designer that it had never occurred to me that I might be the first African American that had ever been hired by General Motors to design a car. Even as an intern, I never even really thought of. I was that focused on design. What I found was a GM design community that was very inclusive. Everyone had a focus on designing automobiles. That was the priority, and it really wasn't on what your background was at all. I spent my first few years at GM Design working on a wide variety of projects, each a great learning experience, and each helping me to gain confidence as a designer. It's true that in many ways, this tunnel vision which I had shielded me from some of the disappointments in life, that many suffer without a dream. But it was also gave me a steady hand to fight the subtle battles and prejudice in the 1970s corporate America as a young black man. In particular, and I guess, I can laugh about it today, but I remember many years ago as a young designer, my supervisor telling me in a very serious tone, and I really think he was trying to be helpful. He said that I was a very talented designer, but a black man leading a design studio or becoming an executive in design was never going to happen. I mean, it was like, whoa, it's like I had been hit with a ton of bricks. I mean, it rocked me at my core, but it caused me to push even harder. And by the way, about a year later, I had his job. Seriously, the word no is something you will hear often through your life in many different ways. But succumbing to it is a luxury that you must never allow yourself, and especially when it has to do with something that you are passionate about, something that drives you, because it's that passion that will drive your mind, your body, and your soul to evolve and progress in ways that will be extraordinary. I learned very early in my career that some of those assignments which I took on may take me way out of my comfort zone. Ultimately, those assignments were the most rewarding experiences. I represented GM Design in China years before everyone was talking about China, and China became the new hot location, the growing area. In fact, no one else wanted to go. I went, and it was the beginning of an understanding of that country and the power of globalization that has served me well through my career. 2 years after that, I took on a one-year assignment in our design studios in Germany. This was also way out of my comfort zone. Everything was different. The language was different, the culture, the rules of the road, even the rules of riding a bicycle were different in Germany, everything. But it ended up being an incredibly valuable experience. Years later, when I was named GM Vice President in charge of design globally, the studios in Germany and China ended up working for me, as well as General Motors design studios in Korea, India, Brazil, Australia, and here in America. I led over 2,000 people in 11 design centers in 7 countries around the world, and was responsible for the design of all Chevrolets, Buicks, Cadillacs, GMCs, Opels in Europe, Holdens in Australia, and the Chinese brands of Wuling and Baojun. In addition, my team developed dealerships and auto show displays, as well as worked with the movie industry on some pretty cool projects. Most notably, I worked with Michael Bay on all 5 of the Transformer movies, including a cameo part in the 4th movie. I'm told that I have been involved in the design of over 550 GM cars and trucks. And at the height of this experience, I chose to retire from GM after 44 years with the company. This is my first job, and I had been there for 44 years. But you can't stop creativity. Creativity isn't something you turn on or off with a switch. I continue to create. And now in this new phase of my life, I'm involved in some very special projects. I'm able to travel the world at my own pace, and this phase is very exciting. Today, I'm involved, again, in some exciting projects which are really bringing new energy to me and my life. I have achieved a lot, but for me, the true force of my life is always evolving, always creating, and always pushing beyond the conventional thinking. That is the living breath of an individual who will really make their mark in the world. All of you are fortunate to have been chosen to be involved in this program. I mean, please take full advantage of this experience and the time that you spend in school as well. What you will learn will take you very far, but ultimately you're going to achieve what you achieve in life is what you're going to continue to learn once you get beyond internships and the time spent in school. I'm really proud of all of you. I'm proud of this program. This is outstanding. I must thank you for having this. And it's been a pleasure to be here. I wanted to allow some time for Q&As, and I understand there's some good questions coming. So thank you very much. Thank you. So who has the first question?
Hi, really big fan, and I just have a question. How do you move forward in design when certain elements of cars are so sacred? Like, for example, the 7th generation Corvette has the square lights, and all of the previous ones since 1953 had circle lights. So how did you navigate that?
Did you give her that? Did you feed her that? It's a great question, and you know, I could do an all-day seminar on that because. Yeah, it's interesting. It's, you know, one day Tommy Hilfiger came to visit me, and in fashion, they're working like a couple years in advance, a year or two in advance. And he asked me how far in advance we're working, and I say the production program's around 4 years in advance. We have some advanced projects that are about 10 to 15 years in advance. And he looked at me like I was nuts. I mean, how do you think about something that far in advance? Yeah, there's so many things that happen in the world that change, and you've got to, and you're trying to develop a relevant product for that many years in advance. That's a significant challenge. In the case of Corvette, round tail lamps have been on the car, you know, like almost forever. And as we're developing the C7 Corvette, the latest Corvette, it was part of our goal, part of my goal, was for the Corvette to appeal to a younger audience. The average age of Corvette owners was just steadily going up, and the sales were going down. And we had a big debate in the studio. We had round tail lamps on the car, and we also had an alternate design with the square lamps. And we're debating back and forth, and I told him, you know, I need a little time to think about it. That evening, I'm watching the evening news, and they were showing the Corvette Club was having a meeting in Detroit, and it was a very positive story. But as I looked at the Corvette Club, everyone had white hair, if they had hair at all, you know. And so that next morning, 7 a.m., I was in the studio, and I said, we're going with the square tail lamps. We needed to go with a more edgy design. We needed to break tradition. Yeah, this car, this is obviously a Corvette Stingray, but it needed that certain edge, that certain attitude. I wanted the new Corvette to be an edgier car. I wanted it, you know, Corvette is a world-class athlete, and I wanted the new car to be a world-class athlete that went back to the gym and got fit. And that's what the car is all about, with its taut muscles and edgy attitude that it has. And the sales have just taken off. And the awards have just come flooding in. I could talk about it forever, but I'm sure there's another question or two. Yes.
Hi, my name is Raquel Harris. I work for the Michigan Department of Transportation, and I'm with the Michigan chapter. And I actually have two questions. So who were your biggest role models and influences in the industry? And my other question is, if you could give us one piece of professional advice, what would it be?
Well, there's several things I could touch on for advice, but heroes in the industry. First off, I have to say my parents did so much for me, and incredible role models and leaders, and you got to understand, growing up in the 60s, Muhammad Ali was just so much of a hero for me. He's a hero of everyone today, but in that time frame, you know, he was so proud and so bold and so strong when very few were, that he became an incredible role model for me and still is today. And I won't talk about that much longer because I'll get all emotional and stuff. But there are certain designers, and maybe it's their designs that were heroes to me. Some of the work, the first Corvette Stingray and the Riviera. There are certain Ferraris like the 250 or the 275, and the Lamborghini Miura, and cars like that. And there are a couple Cadillacs from the 30s and from the 40s that were a great inspiration for me. And in later years, I learned who designed them. And so those people like Sergio Pininfarina and Harley Earl and Battista Bertoni became heroes of mine in design. It's next week, in fact, I will be inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. And thank you. My heroes are in the Automotive Hall of Fame. Harley Earl, Pininfarina, Bertoni, Giugiaro are all in the Hall of Fame. And these people have been my heroes all my life, and I've looked up to them. And next week I'll stand among them, and I'm just totally blown away and emotional about it, and it's one of the most exciting things in my entire life. And so thank you for asking that question. Yeah. Any other questions? By the way, those square tail lamps, the traditional Corvette owners didn't like them at all at first, but they loved the car so much they got over it. Professional advice. The first thing that comes to mind, one of the people that I worked for years ago, Irv Rubicki, said to me, and I was just, I was a low-level designer, and he was the VP of design. And he said, the leaders, the executives in design, they're not perfect people. He said, you can learn what to do from them, and you can learn what not to do. And I've worked for a number of people who had flaws, some of them more than others, but they became incredible learning experiences. I learned, that there were qualities within them that were great. And then I also learned, what not to do. It was right there in front of me, and you learn what not to do. That's as important as anything else. Yeah.
How you doing? My name is Malik Howard. I just graduated from Bridgewater College, information systems major.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a part of the DC chapter. So just to get this straight, the Prowler, the Plymouth Prowler, that was under GM.
The what?
The Prowler.
Oh, that was Chrysler.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, he asked the GM question. So one of my favorite cars is the '96 Impala. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to ask you how, your thoughts or your input on the shift in the body style. I know it went through several models, several changes, and now it's more of a sleeker, family-oriented model, but kind of sporty.
Yeah, the Impala is a good example of design going well and design going wrong. And the Impala has been with Chevrolet for many decades. 58 was the first year for it. Very successful car, in many ways very premium car, and it did a lot to elevate the whole Chevrolet brand. And it was very successful for decade after decade after decade. And then an Impala was developed in the mid-'80s that was very controversial and did not sell well. And it shows how important design is. It didn't sell well. The plant ended up closing, and the city where that car was produced has never been the same. Just because of the aesthetics, a leader in design at that time who ignored, what everyone else was thinking and pushed for a design that was very controversial, and it didn't do well. Now they're able to scramble and rebound and do the Impala SS that you're talking about, which helped to bring sales back a bit. But it was a very limited market for that kind of car, a full-size performance car. People don't want performance, want a smaller car because you're saving hundreds of pounds and your performance is much better. So that market was limited. When developing a vehicle, it'd be great for the design to end up in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, but it's even more important for it to end up in everyone's driveway, in everyone's parking space, and that's even more important. So understanding your customers, understanding the trends are very important. Customers aren't going to design it for you, but having a great dialogue with them and understanding what they're looking for in a vehicle is a huge aid. So more recent Chevy Impalas have done that. At least under my leadership, we spent a lot of time talking to potential customers and understanding what really connects with them. What are they really looking for? Understanding that if you want real performance, you're going to get a Camaro or a Corvette. If you want great interior space and luxury, and this is purely within Chevrolet, then the Impala's the car to do it. But they want to do it in a sporty way. It needs to look sporty, but doesn't necessarily have to have the all-out performance. So understanding your customer, no matter what you're in. It's not just car design, but in other fields as well, is so, so important. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mamadou Diallo. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering at Temple University, and I'm in the Philadelphia chapter.
Yes.
So my question is after you got rejected into 3 schools, did you have any idea of changing something else, or is there anyone who convinced you to do something else?
Yeah, growing up in Philly, I thought, gee, if this design thing doesn't work, maybe I end up being a doo-wop singer or something. I don't know, but I was just so focused on it, and just that determination. I've thought about that. What would I have done? My whole passion, my whole focus was on not just being a car designer, but a car designer for General Motors. So that is a very narrow focus. I did have interest in fashion design. I probably would have ended up in fashion before I would have gone to another car company. Yeah. Even that, though, you've got to get into a design school and get the right training, and to be competitive. Yes. There are a couple questions here.
Good morning. My name is Rodrika Grant, and I'm a senior mass communications major at Savannah State University, and I'm representing the Jacksonville chapter. And my question to you is, how did attending a HBCU specifically benefit or shape your career and the person you are today? Yeah,
that was my 4 years at Howard University were a great chapter in my life. It was incredible. The attention that the instructors gave me, The curriculum was good, but what was really great was that, they understood what my goal was, and they did everything they could to support it. They really helped me in that way. The social life was great as well. I mean, it's like, for me, my social life began when I went to Howard University. And I have developed relationships, friendships that have stayed with me to this day. And you've probably heard it before, but there will be times when you will turn to friends from college years from now for advice or counsel or, some kind of business deal or something. I'm still in communication with people from Howard University today. Yeah, it's good.
One last question. Anyone? Brett? No, go ahead. Oh, okay.
My name is Griffin Frank. I go to Morgan State, graduating in December. I'm at the New York chapter, but live in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Specifically, they have me in the marketing firm at Paco Technologies, and I was just wondering, you designed the Buick LaCrosse, and in the commercials they have Shaq going inside the Buick LaCrosse. Did you know that he for sure would fit inside? Because it kind of looks fake from the commercial, I'm going to be honest.
He fits. The thing I think that triggered that was as we developed that car, a luxury car, at the time, just a bit smaller than where Buick luxury cars had been. But it had a bigger interior. We had really kind of defied the laws of physics or whatever and created this great interior space on a car that was a bit smaller in overall length than the previous generation of Buick. And when we designed a car, because, I'm not a big guy or anything, I'm comfortable in every car. I always, as we're developing the car, I look around the studio and I see, pick at the big guy and have them get in. And I always want to get, some of the smaller people from the studio to get in it as well, because you've got to be able to, in particular today, to develop a vehicle that is comfortable for a much wider group of people than in the past. If you're selling because you got to be able to sell the car in just about any market around the world. Chevrolet sells in 140 markets. So there's a wide variety of people in different proportions of people, not just their size, but their proportions, and you need to allow for that. In the case of Shaq, there was one of the bigger guys in design that I wanted him to get in that car. I know the Buick owners, a lot of them are larger men, and see if he'd fit. This guy wasn't as big as Shaq. I mean, Shaq is, but that was not a dummied up thing. I think our people, our lawyers at GM are far more conservative than to allow them to, like take the seat and move it back further or something, which is what he had to do in other cars he's owned, is have the seat removed and place the auto as far back as possible in the car. Didn't have to do it with the Buick. Okay?
For the Cadillac brand, and again, dealing with the age demographic and seeing the evolution of the Cadillac recently in the last 7 years or so.
Yeah.
What was your thinking? What was your team's thinking in dealing with pulling in a new audience?
Yeah, the Cadillac brand has been a huge challenge. Buick has done very well, and it happened fairly easy, and it's through their SUVs that have done so well. Chevrolet has done well. GMC's done just incredible. Cadillac has been difficult. The traditional Cadillac owners, that group has really gone away. Luxury brands from Europe and from Japan have been very successful. There was an attempt at Cadillac to do Cadillacs that were just like them. And that didn't work. I mean, the customers told us, you know, we like our BMWs and our Mercedes. Don't just give us another car, a BMW or a Mercedes with a Cadillac badge on it. It needs to be something different. And after a lot of work, a lot of homework, and a lot of study, we just realized, you know, Cadillac needed to dare to be different. And daring to be different has really kind of been the battle cry, and has really caused us to do a lot more edgy design. We developed a series of concept cars that kind of, it's our way of testing the waters. Concept cars aren't just, you know, some pretty shape you put in an auto show and, you know, to entertain people. There's a lot of study that goes behind them. Each one is either there to test a new design language or a new vehicle type, or to give you a hint of what's coming. And so we use concept vehicles to help us study what we really needed to do with Cadillac. The work is not done. There's still more work to do here in America. But Cadillac is just taking off like crazy in China. And it's just, I mean, phenomenal. Buick even better. We sell 4 times as many Buicks in China as we do here. And Cadillac in China outsells Cadillac here as well. Yeah.
We are kind of strapped for time because we have to meet the 12:30 bus. I just really quickly have a quick question that I think will benefit all of us here. My name is Maxine Pryor. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
It's great to be
I'm
here.
one of the co-chairs for the intern program, also the chapter president for Colorado, and a small business owner. You mentioned being one of the only, if not the only, the lone at times, African American in the industry, in your space. Can you speak to us about anything about that really? What message would you give us? Because with the transportation industry, again, we're kind of lacking in several spaces, and we will be finding ourselves being the lone one in the conference rooms, in the meetings, et cetera. What kind of advice would you give us?
Yeah, I found that at every stage in my career as I moved up the ladder, I was always, and I never celebrated this because it isn't something to celebrate, I was always the first African American hired, or the first to achieve a certain level, and the first at the next level, and the first and the only to achieve the level that I achieved as the VP of global design. In fact, no one, black, white, or whatever, had that role until I essentially created that global role. I think I have felt more comfortable in the early years in those environments than the others in the room. They were uncomfortable because I was different and they did not know anyone like me other than who they had seen on TV, J.J. Jimmy Walker at the time. And so they thought I was like that. I don't think I'm quite like him, but they thought I was initially. So I think it, in some ways, was more awkward for them than it was for me in the early years. It's been a world that I've lived in for over 40 years, and so I have felt rather comfortable in it. And I think if you're not comfortable, then it really becomes difficult. The guy who came, the African American who was hired after me, in some ways had a more difficult job than I did. I mean, it was more challenging for him. Maybe the fact that I grew up in a very integrated neighborhood helped me, and he didn't. And maybe the fact that they liked me and they thought he was going to be just like me was a real disadvantage for him, and he ended up leaving. I mean, he was actually told we thought we were getting another Ed Welburn, and which is just a terrible thing to do. And he left. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you. I need to think. I'll be thinking about that question all day long.
Well, no, I think the takeaway from that is to be able to embrace
Yeah.
the fact that we
Yeah.
are going to be, the
Don't try to be someone that you're not.
Yeah.
You got to be yourself. You've got to be true to yourself, and I think that's really the best advice I could give you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
So as just mentioned, we only have about 30 minutes to eat and make it downstairs in time for the bus. I do want to say this really quickly. The reason why we had Dante introduce him is that your success here is very important to us, and the fact that we can do things to stretch you is part of that, right? A couple years ago, the gentleman who started this program, Colonel Page, had asked me to do an interview, a recorded interview with at the time FTA Administrator Peter Rogoff. And I was kind of a younger, I transitioned into this industry, and I was kind of young in the industry, and I was like, who, me? It's like, but you have all these presidents and board members around, like, me? And so he stretched me and challenged me to do this interview with Peter Rogoff. And so Dante was so nervous about doing this introduction today because this is somebody that he totally admires, and he was like, did you know that he was in the movies? So we want to make sure that you guys have these kind of opportunities. When you let us know what it is you're interested in, if we can plug you and get you involved and behind the cameras and behind the mic and whatever it is we can do, get you in front of the right people, that's why you're here. So plan on being stretched, plan on being challenged. Don't take it personal. We're here to help you grow. And sometimes, as our speaker said, that requires getting out of the box and getting a little uncomfortable. So get used to being uncomfortable. It's good for you. Go eat.